All right. Thanks for having me. So I'm Samir Balwani, founder of Query. We're a media buying agency. I'm excited to have you guys on. So let's do a quick introduction. Scott, why don't you get started?
Yeah, excited to be here. So Scott Kramer, VP of Growth of AS Beauty. So we are a beauty and cosmetics holding company. Currently 4 brands in our portfolio: Laura Geller, Julep Beauty, Cover FX, and Bliss Skincare. And so we really focus on makeup and skincare for the mature woman. So our target demos are women over 40.
Hey everyone, my name is Kareem Elgendy. I am the CEO of Veiled. We are a women's modest fashion brand based in New Jersey. We operate our own fulfillment center. We're opening our first retail store in the summer. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us, guys. So let's start with the easy questions. How's January and February looking? So Kareem, why don't you give us, how's the beginning of the year?
It's been pretty good for us. We're up 76% year over year. Our MER is also up, so I know people are going to be shocked. But we're at 11.2 for the year. Last year we ended at 9.5. And pretty much all the other metrics are relatively the same. So even profitability and whatnot. So it's really just like driving more traffic to the store and all the other KPIs holding steady.
I know we're gonna get to this, but what's going on there? That's pretty good. I mean, I think like I was gonna jump in and kind of January was good. January is always typically good for us. Obviously, if people buy into the Q5 mentality with Meta, where advertising costs are down, if you also are kind of in the new year, new you kind of space, with which makeup has fallen into, or kind of supplements and the fitness routines. But yeah, would love to learn more about what you guys have been able to unlock.
I mean, hopefully we'll get into this more throughout, but just high level, I mean, a lot of it has to do with merchandising optimizations, making sure we have in stock the products that people want to buy. We're just getting better at that as time goes on.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you say that, Kareem. So our clients are looking great January, February also, and we are telling them you should spend more while there's demand. Why aren't you spending more, Kareem?
Well, we did spend a bit more to achieve that growth.
Yeah.
But besides that, we brought in more traffic. We spent more money.
Yeah.
Everything else basically stayed the same.
That's awesome. So, kind of based on the January looking good and February kind of looking similarly, how are you looking at the next 12 months? Then, are you confident, cautious? Scott, why don't you kind of kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say our January was good. It wasn't amazing, I think, like we had expected. It's been a up and down kind of start to the year. I think there have been some good moments, some rougher moments. I think it's, again, we keep going back. Our average order value is about $50. So I think you hear about the price of eggs going up. Does that change people's mentality of buying products, buying cosmetics? I think there's a lot of macroeconomic, especially at our size, that we really see those effects sometimes. So I think even if we look at October, I don't know how October was for a lot of people, but we saw definitely a big slowdown with the election, and it kind of shifted. I think we started our Black Friday sale earlier just to kind of preemptively see if we could push into that and get out of it. And so we started beginning of November, but really until the day after the election. I think people were just still holding their wallets tighter to their chest. They weren't sure what do they want to spend on. Or it's not like anything dramatic is going to change, but I think people still just have that mental fear sometimes that we think about.
And do you think that's going to continue through?
I hope not, but I think that's just something else that some people need to watch and look to. I think even when you're doing forecasting and kind of budget planning for inventory buys, all that kind of stuff, I think it's important to kind of like think to and look at. And then I think the nice thing is if we're all on fiscal calendars and look at the end of the year, Q4 and holiday comes at the end of the year. So if you do get stuck in a pinch, I think there's opportunity to get more aggressive with your holiday sales if you do need to kind of like get through inventory or some of that. But I mean, for us, Q1 is big. It kind of dips through the year, Q2, Q3, and then climbs back out of Q4. So we always try to push aggressively for acquisition where we can so that we can ride the retention wave through the slower months.
Oh, interesting. Do you flight your media like that too then?
We try to. Again, it's tougher. We manage the business on like an ad to sales ratio.
Okay.
And so we kind of go a little higher than we want for January and February if acquisition looks really good. So we look at that and weighted CAC. If our weighted CAC is healthy, let's acquire as many customers as we can, as profitable as possible. Because if you're looking at, again, over the course of a year, if I'm going to acquire customers, I'd rather acquire them sooner than later so I could get more LTV out of them. So that's kind of the thought we have for January. If like when the getting's good, get as much as you can.
So I'm going to go off questions here for a little bit. How do you communicate that to your finance team? How do you kind of manage that? And then Kareem, I'm going to ask you that same question from a different perspective because you manage your finance team. So I'd love kind of both views of that.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of times growth marketers have become financiers kind of sometimes, or it's like you put on your CFO hat a little bit and kind of like build the forecast for the year and kind of just hold close to it. So our owners actually, they love to have this question with me every year. Like, okay, we like this and we know that we're going to be in this situation, but you're going to come to us in December and be like, hey, Q5 is here. We should continue to spend. And like, okay, well, we won't. So I think it's just building a forecast and holding yourselves accountable to it. And then if you're not hitting that number, what are the backup plans? So I think it's building a moderate forecast, an aggressive forecast, and maybe a light forecast. And then kind of like, hey, if we are all like holding hands and saying, you know what, we're breaking the plan because, or not the plan, we're breaking our kind of like our KPI number.
Yeah.
And because something else looks good, that we think that this is going to pay off better in the long run and we want to invest in it. So I think it's just kind of like bringing all the people into the room and kind of looking at the data and creating a game plan.
So it's almost like an investment conversation versus anything else.
Exactly, yeah. Like, do we want to invest in these customers because the return is going to be better in 6 months?
Kareem, how do you think about that then? How are you looking at and managing your CFO when they're asking, why are we spending this much?
So we don't have a CFO. That's probably step one. I'm pretty much the CFO.
Okay, well that makes that a lot easier.
But yeah, so the mandate that we have with our budget is basically, we have kind of like an input-output model based on different time periods throughout the year. And we know how much we've spent in prior periods to acquire traffic. So we actually look at cost per traffic relatively. We know that we can look at the source breakdown and we can see like, you know, we're spending a little bit more on Meta or Google or whatever. But generally we want to make sure we're bringing enough qualified traffic to the store. So that's how we kind of like set the budgeting and the forecast. If I want to grow 25% in a subsequent period, we're going to try and drive 25% more traffic. The mandate will be to try to bring that traffic at the same rate as we did in the past. And then the rest of the budget, the other like major input is your inventory purchases. So we just invest a lot of time in analyzing both and just trying to hold the qualities of the traffic and the product relatively steady, but just scale it up over time. And that just like creates the whole cash flow forecast for the year.
Yeah, it's really interesting because one of the things that we struggle with a lot is clients coming and saying, we want to spend X, Y, and Z, and we have to remind them that they may not have the inventory to actually support the X, Y, and Z. So it seems like that kind of has been solved on your end in terms of...
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was actually thinking about ahead of this panel was, a lot of my peers, a lot of people in this room probably, we struggle with when performance is there and then when it's not there is trying to figure out what drove that performance or what declined. And so sometimes we'll look at like conversion rate, but conversion rate doesn't always tell the whole story. What if your conversion rate is up because you've discounted more aggressively, or if you didn't? And so there's like a bunch of different variables, but there are a finite number of them. And what that will teach you is, okay, well, we're growing because the product is actually getting stronger, or we're growing because our promotional tactics are better, but then there might be a drawback if you've discounted too aggressively and now you might not have the cash flow, like the profitability, sustain the cash flow to buy the inventory. So now you need to like borrow more money from your inventory financer or whatever, and that can spiral out of control over time. So you really want to try to get to a point where you have some kind of basic input-output model, and you can model out your inventory turn, your conversion rate, all these like fundamental assumptions. And operate that way rather than just like performance is not there, calling up the media buyer and being like, where's all my revenue? I think it's incredibly unfair to put media buyers through that. I think they just need to bring you traffic, and then really the rest of the performance is pretty much on you, unless you notice like if the audience haven't changed, like the audience parameters and the targeting hasn't changed, and everything else is pretty much the same. The creative like obviously can go up and down. Then there are 100 other things you could look at on the website side, on the brand side, that you can optimize.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, we struggle with trying to help our clients really understand, is it the product? Is it the inventory? Is it how it's being presented versus how is the media buy going? Scott, how do you guys look at that? How do you figure out, is this product a hit? And we're going to, because you have demand planners, right? They're buying inventory ahead of time. They're making some big bets.
Yeah, from the last question, I mean, that was going off in the back of my head. Demand planning. Like, we're continuing conversations. We're about 6 to 9 month lead time, so trying to plan these buys. And then the product doesn't all come in at once. So we're putting these orders in, and we're getting 10,000 units, 20,000, 100,000. We are then paying extra sometimes to air it because our products are coming from Italy and China. We got components from China that are going to Italy, and so we're buying raw components and then putting more material in it. So it's like, how do we plan those aspects? So there's a lot that goes into it, and it's trying to forecast in them with the different shades. So it's really complex, and then kind of talking with the marketers and the demand planners, like they always want to know, like, well, how much are you going to push? And I think this is also the hardest part. It's like, just because you create an ad for an item doesn't mean that's going to be what the customer buys. I think we were talking about this earlier. It's like, I worked in years past in apparel with a hatwear company, and they had major licensing with all the major sports teams. And we'd run ads for Yankees hats and Red Sox hats. And they did okay. And then we started running, they did a limited edition of like Hawaii style hats. Yeah. And it was like, okay, like the Yankees hat with like Hawaii logos, and these ads did amazing. And then we went and looked in the back end. It's like, wait a second, no one's actually buying those hats. Yeah. But the ad was so good at like showing this cool, something different that people haven't seen to get them in the door. And they still go and buy the blue and white Yankee hat, the blue and red Sox hat. I think the same apparel, especially. It's like, I think that's a big thing. How do you get people to come in? I think it's like people are still going to go to Aloe Yoga, especially guys, and buy the black shirt, the black leggings. They're not going to get the crazy colors, but maybe those colors help bring people in. Women may be a little different, but I think there's still a lot of that. Of like, they're buying the neutral tones and not the loud ones at scale.
Yeah, we talked about this where product selection is your brand marketing too, right? So how are you presenting the brand in a way that you've got this product and it's front and center, even if people aren't actually buying it. So.
Right. And if you can do that aspect, is like creating these limited edition things that drives urgency, but then also drives interest in the brand. Again, still, if it's like, hey, limited edition, someone comes, they're not going to buy that limited edition item, but they're just like, now they know the brand and buy whatever they're comfortable with.
So the brand manager is still going to come to you and ask you, how are you pushing my product? How do you figure out how I'm going to get this product moving, or I have a lot of inventory in this product, I need to figure out how to move it? Is that mostly promotion and offer, or are you actually shifting budget to things?
It all depends. I think we come across that every once in a while. We're trying to be much more in tune or in step together on like, hey, if we're putting these orders in, how are we going to support this? So we have we call our re-support meeting. We do it twice a month. And we'll meet with all the different channels also, because that's another opportunity. Because e-com's our largest. We also have Amazon. We have QVC and wholesale. So again, it's like, maybe it's not an item that we're pushing. And so it's like, who's taking this item? Who can help support? Maybe it's doing well on Amazon. We want to move it over there. We also sometimes liquidate items through other wholesalers that it's not moving, but we just want to move the product and get it off our books.
That's interesting. Kareem, do you run into those issues as well, where you've got inventory that's just sitting and you can't figure out how to get rid of it?
Yeah, I feel really fortunate that we do have the input-output model. It solves a lot of issues for us, but it's never perfect. So after about 6 months in, we'll start discounting at like 25%. Our baseline discounts are 20%, and then we'll go up to like 30%, 35%, and then after that, it's just like in the clearance section and try to just recoup our money. So that's how we kind of look at it, and we just study on average what the kind of like average turn is for different categories of products. We have like broken out by, how the performance is across, tops, bottoms, dresses, etc. And so we're able to build reliable assumptions since we've categorized it. It's not as broad as like the whole store. It's not as tedious as like at the SKU level or like silhouette level.
So let's talk a little bit more around how you actually figure out if your performance marketing is working and what you're going to do about it. So when you are in your weekly performance marketing or your media meetings, what are the things that you guys are looking for? How are you thinking about what's holding you back? What's their opportunity? Scott, maybe I'll have you kick off there.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we try focusing as much of our marketing dollars on new customer acquisition. So we're very much focused on new customer ROAS or ROAS in general, depending how the campaign structures are set up, and then like a weighted CAC. So again, looking at all of our marketing dollars and how many new customers did we acquire. And this is just looking at our .com channel specifically, because we know that, again, it's that understanding of if we acquire customers, our repeat rates, LTV, to calculate a forecast of it. So we're very much building the base for what our total revenue could be. So again, it's kind of like laddering up of how much can we spend? Are we going to hit the monthly targets? And we build our marketing calendar around that to kind of see how we're pacing. So again, are we on pace? Are we behind pace? Like, where is that going to land us? And like, how did the last week do? So we meet every Monday, go through the numbers, go through all the channels. So we're advertising across probably 10 different channels,
so much
from TV to Meta, TikTok, Pinterest, Outbrain, Live Intent, AppLovin. I mean, it's a lot to manage across them. And so it's like, where are we shifting dollars and how are we seeing them perform?
And that's across 3 brands too, right?
One main brand is that.
Yeah.
Thankfully, not all the brands.
Yeah.
One day maybe.
Yeah. Kareem, how are you looking at your results and how it's going?
Just to make a comment on what Scott said, we focus a lot more on the warmer audiences, and we just look at like correlative performance overall and how it's changing over time, and then we'll dive in as needed. And what we've set up is kind of like a KPI hierarchy that starts with like if our goal is either profitability or say like growth, and then what drives that is usually going to be your COGS, your AOV, your conversion rate, and the traffic to the store. And then from there you could break out like spend and other like, so it kind of branches out. And so say we're off target on growth or profitability, whatever it is, depending on the period, then we'll kind of move down to the next metric in the structure and kind of like analyze that. We do it now without thinking, but in the beginning we actually mapped out like that branching structures to help us not waste a lot of time looking in the wrong places when things are not performing well. So sometimes, for example, we identify really quickly, the CPM is off. So it's not just a matter of like, conversion rate is down or whatever, or like, no, you didn't bring enough traffic. You didn't bring enough traffic because your spend was capped and your spend wasn't as effective in driving the traffic because of CPM. Why is CPM up? Well, there kind of are ways to determine whether it's like ad fatigue or there's just like a lot of competitive spend. So in the conversations we have with our media buyers, they also double up as like they also provide all of our like analytics dashboards. So they will at least advise us on what they think is happening with the business overall. And if it's something that falls under their scope of work, then we address it with them. Sometimes, like we had an anomaly once where performance was down. We really couldn't peg it back to anything except for upper funnel. And it turns out that overnight, the Meta's like algorithm changed, or the ads structures were just like shifted, and it triggered increased spending on the colder audiences. And so like our balance of like cold, warm, and hot audiences was totally off. And so we didn't know exactly what the issue was, but we knew that it had to be in this zone of issues. They changed that, and the performance bounced right back.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love the KPI hierarchy because the number of times that we get is every KPI is important is not true. You also said something really nice as a media buyer. You said sales or growth, like profitability or revenue growth. That's usually an and. You should figure that out. My last question for you guys, what's the one thing a brand should start to do today?
Yeah, I think, Kareem touched on it. I think analyst is a big one. I mean, I think that's the toughest part is like, especially as teams grow, and it's like a lot of people are looking at data. Everyone starts pulling data their own way. It's like, I think we've access to Shopify data, metadata, Triple Whale, Northbeam, whatever it is. And I think that's where it's like, we may be looking at one thing saying, hey, ROAS looks good. Someone else is looking at other metrics. I think it's like having either a central source of data, either data warehouse, definitions, or having like a sole analytics team, or even single person. I think just kind of getting clear of like, what are we looking at, how everyone is aligned. It's like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? It's like, it's not the media buying, it's conversion rate. Okay, well then let's all agree that it's conversion rate. Let's go fix that. Is it the offer isn't good? Is our site slow? Like, it could be any number of things. I think it's just like getting everyone together to understand if you're triaging a problem or just trying to improve performance in general. What is the thing that we can move the needle on the most? Because like, maybe you've got great ads and it's like, everyone's like, we need new ads. It's like, no, you need to either improve the offer. Maybe you need to increase AOV to get the right metrics. So,
or you're promoting the wrong product.
Right, or the wrong product, exactly.
Okay, we're gonna We're going to open it up to Q&A. You guys can have some finishing remarks if you like, but we're gonna jump into Q&A.
Why don't you just finish out your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Really, I'm just going to reinforce what you said. I think being able to get all the stakeholders aligned around like real data is the key thing. It was a year ago that we hired our full-time data analyst in-house, and our corporate team is only like 15 people. And then we also have like the agency. And we hired a developer recently. So we're investing a lot of resources in data and analytics to uncover all the possible opportunities in improving business performance and leaving no stone unturned. So I think that's probably like one of the biggest things you could do.
Okay, great. So we're going to open up to Q&A. If you have a question, please wait for the mic so everyone can hear your question. So do we have any questions? Yes, right over here in the front.
Hi, my question's for Scott. I'm curious, when you look at your weighted CAC on .com, how are you thinking about the halo effect on all your other channels, and vice versa, the cannibalization on like QVC or Amazon or even wholesale?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one, we've done some geo holdout tests to help us see what that lift is. I think that's where now we're trying to move to a more unified P&L where we had separated P&Ls to really understand that. But the long and short of it is we're looking to invest in MMM. We've tested out a few of them. I think depending on the size of the business, these can range in price. But I think if the business is a large enough size, it warrants some of the more meatier MMMs that really are robust at kind of giving that better attribution.
Wonderful. Everyone, just really quick before we move forward, we're going to have our second round table soon. If you guys take a look at the bottom left of your name tag, there's a letter L with a number. That's the round table that you will attend after this Q&A session, okay? So you'll find that through where everyone got coffee and food. Just keep going through and you'll see everything numbered 1 through, I think, 20-something. So, all right. Any more questions? Right here in the back. Yep, we'll come right to you next.
We're a small team, and I keep pushing for a data analyst, but they keep saying we don't have budget. What tools do you use? I have like Lifetimely, but are there any other tools you're using just to measure profitability, to see data quickly, all of that?
We ran into a lot of issues trying to measure profitability because, first of all, like COGS are incredibly annoying to map. We have 10,000 SKU variants, and then the other issue was we're almost 100% direct consumer through Shopify. So discounting is a mess in Shopify. If you strike through the price, it's not reflected in the discount calculation. So we had to remap all of that. And a lot of that has been built through either Power BI or through Google Cloud Services. So we just did a lot of custom work. Like I was actually involved in that, just pouring through thousands and thousands of Shopify line item exports, and just like trying to like help my data people and my accountants like reverse engineer how Shopify is doing all its like calculations and then map it properly so we can have real data to work with. So, but we didn't invest that much in like our data analysts. We hired a more entry level position, just to be realistic with like the budget of our brand.
Yeah, we originally started with like a consulting company that was able to build out like a Power BI dashboard and tool to kind of integrate all of that. So I think it's a tough one. It's one that you don't want to have to spend on. I think we use Lifetimely. That was part of the problem. It's like someone's looking at Lifetimely, someone's looking at Shopify cohorts, and everyone's kind of doing different things.
It's funny. Suze this morning in the keynote was talking about global hiring for data analysts. I think that's a huge opportunity and could actually help unlock a lot of growth. Data's key for being able to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's building out the framework that hopefully then doesn't change. So once you have it set, hopefully as long as it doesn't break, and you're not adding more channels or more things, then hopefully you're steady for a little bit.
I mean, that's the thing, actually. I think the hidden power of a data analyst is knowing if something broke. The worst is data broke and everyone thinks it's still gospel and it hasn't been uploaded. It's just wrong. So, yeah.
Wonderful. We're going to have one more question. Just so you guys know, when you hit your round tables, you will see a piece of paper that is a series of questions to help you guys get going with your collaborations. Okay, last question here in the back.
Great insight. Thank you, all of you, for sharing these learnings. Would love to hear one thing you've learned from a recent test and learn and what you did with that insight.
I think the easy one was the Amazon Halo lift test, and that's where we are just heavily investing into I think it showed somewhere between like 10 and 15% of a Halo just on Meta to Amazon. So that's like that was one channel. We also are on, I was saying, like linear TV and other channels like that. So maybe they have a greater or a smaller impact to other channels. So trying to invest into that for the future.
We did a giveaway where if you're a first-time customer, and we had to build out like a whole machine to do this, but basically we were able to validate. We use a service called Locate. They have an API that lets you validate addresses, and we had to make sure customers who have truly never ordered from us before, limit one per household, would qualify for this offer. And if they're a first-time customer, we give them a $15 product for free, based on our CAC. That's how we came up with like that value. And then we were able to measure, their repeat purchase and LTV and all of that. So that's something we started like 6 months ago, and we're only fully aware of like the benefits of it today. So now we can scale that up, and it performed phenomenally. So
We ran a big YouTube media buy on YouTube Reserve and got to see a commensurate growth in our branded search. When we used post-purchase survey, we found that the YouTube campaigns had an 8x return for us, and is now like a staple for that brand. So I know, Zach, that was not your reason why you asked that question, but it's definitely it was our biggest one that we ran.
All right, thank you so much. A round of applause for our panelists.